Hello, welcome back to another episode of Storybound, where we talk about the intersection of neurodivergence, mental illness, and creativity. So glad you are here with us, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. Today on the podcast, we have Lillian Empire. Lillian, would you mind telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
First of all, hi, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here, giving me this opportunity. This is really cool. This is my podcast debut because I've never been invited to one before. But I'm an author. I write queer romances. Right now, I have one book out that's an M romance, and I have a second one coming out that's an M romance. But I also have FF romances planned out in the future that I just the ideas actually literally just came to me within the last couple of weeks. And I have attention deficit disorder. I'm an
Thank you.
author with attention deficit disorder, and I'll tell you the story of how I got diagnosed with it. Okay.
I'd love to know.
So, I was diagnosed 2 years ago when I was 41.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if late diagnosed people all go through these stages of grief. I went through, I don't know what to even call them, stages of.
It
So,
is definitely
yeah.
stages of grief.
So what happened was the reason I never really even considered this was an issue that I had, right? So pretty much my entire life, any sort of medical professional was like, it's anxiety, you've got depression. It's anxiety, you've got depression. And granted, both those things actually run in my family. Well, around 2020, while everybody's all cooped up at home, I saw this article by this woman, and I wish I could remember her name, but the name of the article was something along the lines of the lost girls or the lost women.
Yeah, it's a book, isn't it?
She might have made it into a book.
I think so.
Yeah.
Turned into a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wrote this article about she was at the time, so I was 39, so I think she was close to my age, the woman that wrote it. And she talks about how she went through her entire life with all these issues and all these problems. And then she finds out that she has attention deficit disorder. And she writes about how there's a generation of women who either did not get diagnosed or misdiagnosed with other things, right? And I'm in that generation because I don't know if you remember, there was a huge controversy over Ritalin back
Oh, yeah, I
yeah.
remember it.
I actually remember there was this huge thing about it, and but doctors would diagnose boys with it because they were hyperactive.
Yeah.
And girls don't always present that way. Usually we're just inattentive. And that was 100% me. So everything this woman was talking about, actually, I was hyperactive as a kid. I actually was. I was actually a hyperactive kid. So I don't know. So everything this woman said, I was like, oh my God, that sounds like me. Well, it took me 2 years to finally go to a doctor, and lo and behold, she gave me a blood test and everything to make sure it wasn't anything else. I'm actually had 3 medical professionals confirm now that this is true, that this is a thing. And I also I don't know if you've ever had this done, there's like a gene test that you can do.
No, I haven't.
There's a gene test you can do. The one that I did was supposed to help you determine what medications you can take that are gonna work with you and ones that won't. But they discovered I have a gene mutation, and that gene mutation is the direct cause of ADHD and autism. So I haven't been diagnosed with autism, but I have a cousin that is, right?
It's hereditary. It runs in families.
Yeah. So I was 41 years old and I was diagnosed with this, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I was like, I don't know what to think about this. I was mad. I was like, why the hell didn't anybody notice this when I was a kid?
Absolutely.
Yeah, weren't you just like, why didn't anybody notice this? Why didn't anybody say anything?
I was right after I got diagnosed, right? Because I'm recently diagnosed. Like, I got my formal diagnosis in May, I think, for autism and ADHD, confirmed by two different professionals. I went and saw two different psychologists, had two different psych evals, all those things.
Yeah.
I'm very angry because I was shoved all these meds my whole life that helped zilch, that did nothing. They either flatlined me or like made me put on all this weight. And I was still suicidal on all of these meds. I was still struggling to manage my life. And when I got my diagnosis, so much of my life made sense. And I was finally able to accommodate myself in the way I needed to be accommodated. Once I started accommodating myself and lean into my autistic tendencies and not beating myself up about my ADHD, like my short attention span and things like that, my depression and my anxiety lessened, especially my depression. I still struggle with anxiety a lot. I don't think it'll ever go away, but my depression has severely dropped since I started leaning in and accommodating myself once I finally had answers. Because just like you, I was misdiagnosed my whole life. I was even at one point, a doctor said that I was bipolar. I never felt that because I had a mother who was bipolar. And so I knew what that looked like. I was like, I'm not like that. I went and had 2 psyche evals and they're like, no, you definitely are not bipolar.
Yeah.
You're these things. And your anxiety and depression are just like symptoms of, I was really angry. I was very angry because I'd been begging for help for my entire life. Since I was a teenager, I was begging for help and nobody listened.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I have a sneaking suspicion that my parents may have been told by somebody. Maybe they rejected it because they were like, no, she's a girl.
There's no way.
Ritalin. She's gonna be on that Ritalin. So I don't know. I haven't really, because they reacted really weird when I told them. They reacted weird. But anyway, so at first I was like, oh, thank God I finally have an answer. Finally, now I know. Now I know why, and it all falls into place. Everything sort of makes sense. Now I know why. Because I remember being in elementary school and I had those desks that opened up. The top. Yeah. I remember I had 3rd grade. I had one of those desks that open up, and it was the messiest thing ever. It was just a huge freaking mess, and everybody else's was nice and neat. And I remember always thinking that my mom even would tell me this. She's, well, it's because you watch too much TV. That's why you can't get your work. That's why you're so messy or whatever. So the first thing that I felt was relief because I had an answer. But the second thing I felt was mad. I was like, what the hell? I could have had all this help. I could have had all this assistance through not just grade school, but college and graduate school because ADHD is a disability recognized by the ADA. You can have all these accommodations, and I did not get any of that stuff. I had to do everything the same way that a neurotypical person had to do it and had to live up to expectations that I just wouldn't be able to do. But I'll tell you, my mindset has changed because I have decided to stop looking at it. Because at first I was like, oh my God, this is going to suck. Then I was like, you know what? I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that I have this because you know what? It's got me this far in life. And I think that people who are neurodivergent have a tremendous gift in creativity, not just writing, painting, music, because we can see the world in a different way. We are filtering the world in a very unique and different way. It's a gift because we can put that into our writing. We can put it into music. We can put it into any other kind of art form. So it's a benefit. I feel like it's good. I feel like it's gotten me this far, and I feel like it is helpful for me in my writing. I really do. Now, as far as the process of writing, I have no process. You know how there's all this advice out there how to write a novel.
Yeah, every day. Write every day. Write every day. That one kills me. Like it kills me.
Yes.
Yeah. My brain does not work that way.
Right. I can't okay. So at first I was looking at all the AuthorTube stuff and and trying to take their advice and how they do things. And okay, some authors, they have to have an outline. They have to have their characters all figured out. They have to have everything, all this stuff organized prior to starting. That's just how their brain works. That's not how mine works.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. What does your process look like?
Okay, so it's nuts. See, I do literally the exact opposite of what they tell you to do. I don't do anything the right way. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't outline a fucking thing. I don't outline actually, that's not true. I did outline a short story, but I'm not following the outline, which is why, but I'll try to outline. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to try to do an outline just to see if I can do it, but I don't follow it. I'm not following the outline. I'm going to add in all kinds of shit that's not even on there. I know that I will.
Yeah.
So I don't outline. I will just sit down and start writing the story. I might get only 10,000 words in, or I might get 20,000 words in, but I'm going to just start writing the story. And that's it. I'm not going to outline anything. I'm not going to do any character questionnaires or whatever. I'm not doing any of that stuff because I know that I won't stick with it. I know that all this stuff is going to change. So what ends up happening is I end up writing about half of it or a quarter of it.
And you
And,
let it sit.
and then I come back to it like about a week or two later. And then I read, and then you're not supposed to edit as you write. Well, that's what I do.
Yeah,
I go
I
back.
do that
I
too.
go back and I start at the beginning and I read what I wrote and I edit it as I go. I add in stuff because it gives me ideas to add in stuff. It gives me ideas to add in more dialogue here, this
Yeah,
characteristic here, add another scene here, all that stuff. It gives me all these ideas. And then, but that's typically how I do it. And I know that the rule is don't do that. Just write, just start writing and,
that's
and make
right.
sure that you write, like you just said, write every single day. That's not going to happen, especially because I have a full time job, right? And
Mhm.
it is remote, but that it still takes up. So my work schedule is 10-hour days, 4 days a week. So I have 3 days
That's
off. I wanted to do that specifically because I knew I could have those 3 days to work on self-publishing, writing stuff, right? It's a
yeah.
never-ending thing. If you're self-publishing, you got to do everything.
Yeah, I do. Because I'm in the process right now. I'm over chasing the traditional route. It's been really bad for my anxiety and my depression. It's spiraled through it. And so I actually feel like really invigorated now that I've decided to self publish, but it's also very daunting. So I'm over here looking for editors. I'm over here looking for cover designers. Like I'm over here trying to determine what's used for my mailing list. Like it is a lot. It's quite a bit.
You got to make all kinds of
My
decisions.
gosh, my cat is like parkouring all over the house.
Yeah. My cat might wander in here because he might think that I'm talking to him. Because if he can't see who I'm talking to, he'll think that I'm just talking to him.
That's
So he might wander in here. I think he's napping somewhere else. But yeah, you have to make a ton of decisions as the person in charge of it. And I'm like you. I was like, I don't want to go the traditional publishing route because I'm impatient and I don't want to deal with waiting on somebody to come. I can just do it myself. The exchange, the sacrifice that you make is you actually literally have to do everything yourself. I think there's some self-published authors that have made enough money where they have virtual assistants and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've seen that like on Threads. I've seen a
Yeah.
couple of authors who have what they call PAs, like personal assistants, and they help them with like their social media and graphics and things like that. It'd definitely be nice to get to that place one day where you can have a little team.
Yeah, because right now it's just me. But yeah, I can recommend some stuff if you want, as far as cover designers, editors, mailing lists, all that stuff. If you want, I have all that. I've done all that. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I actually had a couple of people tell me, they said, why don't you have an author too? Why don't, because you can speak to the process. You've done it. Why
Yeah.
don't you just go tell? And I said, because the way that I do it is so chaotic, it's not going to make any sense to anybody. I don't
Well,
do it the
I
right way.
well, that's true. That's so true. The way that we do things is different, right? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast was because so much creative advice doesn't like work for us, right? It doesn't work for us at all. I know so many different ADHDers who write in big sprints. They get in this big hyper focus and they'll pump out thousands of words at a
Yes.
single time
Yes.
and just vomit it all up.
Yes.
And then they'll stop writing for a week or two and then come back to it and do it all over again.
That's me.
It's a totally different sort of process, right? So I get it. I definitely get it. I'm not a giant word vomiter. So my hyperfixation is a little bit broader. A lot of ADHD writers, I've seen that I'm a little bit different, but that might be because I have autism. The way that I hyperfocus is different. I'm hyperfocused, like writing has become my life, right? So I have started this podcast now, talking to writers. I have a blog, all these different facets that I've made writing my life. So it's like an overall hyperfixation. I don't dump out mass words at a time. I wish I could. I wish that I could, but I'm a painfully slow writer. And I think that's because I also have OCD. So it's a bit of a perfectionism thing that I have. And so it's like really hard for me to get out the words. I've been really trying lately to turn that editor off in my brain to let go of that perfectionism. And I have definitely upped my word counts in the last 2 or 3 months where I used to sit down at a writing session and I might get 500 words. But now my average is between 1,500 and 2,000 in that same amount of time for a writing session. So I'm training my brain to turn off that perfectionism and that editor, but it's incredibly, incredibly hard.
Yeah, it is. And for me, what usually ends up happening is at the very beginning, before I write anything, when I'm getting the idea, I usually get my ideas when I'm doing something super mundane. I'm taking a shower, or I'm driving in the car listening to music, or I'm
That
just
happened to
listening
me
to
last night.
or I'm just listening to it on my headphones, because This literally happened within the last 24 hours. You know that song, Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for
Yeah.
Fears from the
Yeah.
80s? I was like, I haven't heard that song in a long time. I think I'll listen to it. So I'm listening to it yesterday, and I don't know about you. I put songs on a loop. I'll just put one song on a freaking loop
I am absolutely that way.
and
And
it'll just
it's a form of hyperfixation. And you just
yeah.
listen to it over and you can hear all the little sounds
Yes.
and like layers to it.
Yes, that's usually what happens. And so I got this really good idea for an FF romance. And I was like, oh, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I could see the characters, all this stuff. So usually that's what ends up happening. And then I got to go try to get, and what I started doing was I use Scrivener. That's what I write on. Because Scrivener has that thing where you can move the little index cards around. So if I
Yeah.
change my mind about something, I can just move it around. What I started doing is instead of opening a Scrivener project, I'll go and I'll open up a Word document and I'll just type out what I'm thinking and leave it there for it
Like
kind
a
of
stream of consciousness.
yeah, okay. This like idea, and then I just type out what the idea is.
So you're not necessarily writing a story, but you're like telling it to yourself, like
Yeah.
there's this person and they're doing
Yeah.
that and this is how they meet.
Yes.
I do that too.
Yes. And then I write down the song that I was listening to so I can go back and listen to the song because it'll signal in my mind what I was thinking.
And that image will come back.
Do what?
Like that image that when you were listening to it, it will come back. It'll reactivate that.
Yes, exactly. So, but yeah, that's typically how the idea starts. And I have all these projects, these Word documents sitting in my computer right now, just twiddling their thumbs, waiting on me to get to them because I have a lot. So the thing that I wanted to do when I started out writing gay romance was I didn't see enough gay romances that were set in other decades.
Are you writing like contemporary? Or are you writing fantasy? What's the overall genre?
So my very first novel was set in the 1950s.
That's so cool.
And a gay romance between two men in the 1950s. And I came up with the idea listening to 50s music because I thought about actually it was fan fiction first. It was fan fiction first, then I turned it into a novel.
Fan fiction of what? Of which what show?
So I used to write fan fiction for all kinds of stuff. That's how I started writing.
That's a lot of writers get started there.
Yes. So the very first fan fiction I wrote was for Breaking Bad years ago.
Love that show. So good.
Yes.
Good. Either did I. It's massive. It's huge. It's hard for me to finish anything.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and then the second show I started writing fan fiction for was The X-Files.
Goes one too.
Yeah. So I did that. And then I wrote a couple of things for that book called A Separate Piece.
No.
So that book.
A separate piece?
Yeah, a separate piece. I remember John Knowles. I remember having to read that book the summer between 9th and 10th grade, and I thought it was boring back then. But there's some homoerotic undertones in that book because it's literally a male character obsessing over another male character. They don't actually really do anything. But so many people, because of their relationship, have written a lot of fan fiction about those two. So that's what I ended up doing. And then the last one I wrote for was Call Me By Your Name. The movie Call Me By Your Name. It was a book, and then it became a movie. So that was where this 1950s novel came from. It started out as fan fiction. And the trope that I had in my mind was a nerdy 1950s dude with this biker, James Dean, rebel without a cause guy. And I was like, I'm going to write that. And that's what it's going to be. And I didn't see, there are actually a lot more people writing in those different, like the ones that I've seen have been for really deep history, like I saw one for like medieval, Middle Ages time. Yeah. And I saw another one that was like Victorian, Edwardian. And then I've seen World War II ones, but I was like, I want 1950s. I want 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So my second one is set in the 90s.
I love the 90s. I'm a 90s baby though. So it's so nostalgic for me. And I don't know. I feel like the 90s in general is just nostalgic. Like I feel like not even 90s babies are nostalgic for the 90s. Like so much of like, what is it? The current Gen Alpha? Is that what they're called? Gen Alpha? Like the middle schoolers. A lot of the fashion that we had in the 90s is like coming back.
I've seen that.
And Gen Alpha is wearing a lot of the things that like I wore as a kid. It's so weird.
Isn't it weird how it boomerangs back?
But I love seeing it again. Because again, it warms my heart. It warms my
Yeah.
heart. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
But I love that you're writing like these queer romances through the decades almost. I love that because I feel like so much of our historical history in general. So I'm not even just saying like historical fiction, but I'm just saying history in general really ignores like the gay story, right? And ignores that like gay people existed when like they've been around since the dawn of time. I think what you're doing is amazing. I think you're really giving a voice to people who need that. And there definitely needs to be more of it. So I love that you're doing it.
Yeah, I actually have an idea for every decade of the 20th century. I have one for the aughts, the 2010s, the 2020s, but except for, well, no, there's 3 decades that I'm still missing, but I think I'm filling. I think it was the 1910s, the 1900s, the 1930s. I don't know about these, but I have all these ideas and they're just sitting there in all these files just waiting for me to get to them. So I have that 50s one out, the 90s one is coming up, then I have one for the 1970s. I'm planning that one for my third novel. And then I have 2 80s ideas. One is MM and one is FF. So I'm going to have, so yeah,
You're
like
all over the place. I love it.
yeah,
How
and
do you, how do you,
I have an aughts one too, 2000s. And I'm actually really excited about that one because one of the characters, you remember Emo?
legit on TikTok call myself an elder emo.
Oh,
Like
really?
I am like I'm an alt girl all the way. I listen to rock and like EDM and I'm covered in tattoos. Like it was never a phase for me. I have that it has stuck with me. I could show you some of my outfits. I have outfit like alt mid-size like outfits on TikTok that I do. So yeah, I've definitely been like with emo. It's a thing that's very close to my heart.
Yeah, so I was actually too old for the emo thing in the 2000s. I listened to the music, but I was in my 20s. It was mostly for teenagers. I was just too old. But I liked the music. So I have a character that's emo. And his character is based off a fan fiction character that I wrote because he was an emo character. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, all these people in my head. It's like I have all these imaginary people in my head poking me and say, okay, it's time to write my story. It's time for you to write my story. Because like you said, it's like I had a couple of people even ask me, they were just like, why'd you write in the 50s? That's a terrible time. Gay people were oppressed and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? If these love stories did not happen, if they didn't exist, we would not be here today. We would not have the Pride Month that we have today. We would not
Yeah.
have what we have now because there were the gays and the lesbians of yesteryear who lived through these time periods and did not succumb to rejecting their identity and trying to live a different life. They accepted who they were, they loved who they loved, and we live that legacy now, right? They were
I
brave. They were
agree.
very
I
brave.
agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. That has to be challenging, though, to write in those time periods, right? In the 1950s, because of the way the roles and so it's a lot of almost forbidden romance,
Yes.
right? So it's
Yeah.
a lot of sneaking around or trying to hide it from the public. So it has to be challenging to write, even.
It is. And I'll tell you, I had to look up a whole bunch of laws in the United States. And there's all these little things that actually happened in the 1950s. So there was an act that Eisenhower signed, I believe it was 1957, that forbade homosexuals in the federal government.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he signed it. So it just gave federal employees.
So they couldn't identify as gay or they wouldn't be hired
Right,
essentially,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah. And that's a kind of a little bit of a scary thing in the way that we're moving right now a little bit politically because we've heard a lot of rhetoric about like DEI being like taken away in terms of I've heard some crazy stuff. Not going to dive super into it for the podcast, but I definitely can see how that would be detrimental to the people.
Yeah. So, and there was another one of the wins, though. There was actually a win, sort of, for gay rights. I guess you could put it that way. In the 1950s, there was an obscenity act or an obscenity clause that went to court, went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ended up deciding that written fiction works, I think magazines and stuff like that, did not fall under the Obscenity Act. So what ended up happening was one of the first magazines geared towards gay men started in the 1950s. And then you also had gay fiction pulps Pulp Fiction, and most of them were being written by men, but some of them were lesbian and some of them gay men, but they started coming out in the 1950s because the Obscenity Act couldn't touch them because it was seen as free speech. It was seen as something you couldn't. So that was like a win because a lot of gay men and gay women were able to find this, and it wasn't mainstream. They had to go to bus stations to find these novels. Helped them a little bit maybe with their identity and helped them a little bit to have something out there for them. And of course, there was also in bigger cities, there was like gay bars, but they were always hidden. And sometimes they would have to make deals with the cops so the cops wouldn't bother them, but the cops would bother them anyway. So like Miami had some gay bars and some lesbian bars. And I actually found some historical pictures from a lot of that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. So I mean, it was hard to write in because I had to think about, well, these guys can't be free. They can't necessarily be out there affectionate. I think it's hard sometimes for two women and two men to be affectionate now out in public.
I mean,
So, but yeah, it was definitely hard. There was internalized homophobia to wrestle with, and it was considered a psychiatric disorder.
yeah,
Considered a
no, I've heard,
psychiatric
no.
disorder. Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's so terrible
Yeah.
that how the way gay people have been oppressed and looked at and
Yeah.
demonized.
It wasn't
It's
removed.
absolutely
It wasn't removed from the DSM until the 1970s. Yeah. It was on.
stupid.
Yeah. I basically went down rabbit holes with all this history because I had to learn all of it.
So how do you deal with that, like in terms of your process? You have all of these different ideas, right? And all these different decades that you're wrestling with and all this different research that you're wrestling with. How do you decide what project you're working on? And do you work on one project at a time or are you all over the place?
Well, okay. I am the kind of person, we were talking about the word count thing, and you got to write every day. I'm one of those people that I write when I feel like it, which is almost every day.
Like,
do what?
Do you feel like if you put that role on yourself, like I have to write every day, that it almost is like a detriment to you, that your brain and it like fights against it?
Yeah.
So instead of making rules, you just follow what your body is feeling, what your brain is feeling.
Yeah, because it turns it into a chore. I don't want it to be
exactly.
A chore. I don't want it to
I
be a
don't
chore
either.
You asked the question, do I work on one project at a time? Hell the fuck no, I do not. I work on multiple things at once. I do. So this is what I end up doing. It seems to be working for me. I don't know. So this second novel that's coming out,
When did it come out?
I think the end of September. I've got
Well,
that.
soon.
It should be then. I got all kinds of stuff. But I thought when I was writing this, I thought of a short story. I thought of this sort of short story. And the idea for that one was also set in the 90s. But you remember how 90s teen movies always had all these deals and bets. We're going to lose our virginity by prom. I'm going to make this deal. And then there was always that nerd to hot makeover where they take off the person's glasses. They're hot. So, and I thought about all those movies and I thought to myself, I was like, hey, why don't I just write something like that, but make it gay? Like, why don't I just write a story like that, but it's going to be gay. So what I did was I thought of this short story. And the romance is going to be between two men, and it's going to have all of that. It's going to have the bets and the deals and the nerd to hot makeover thing, take off the glasses, all that stuff. So I thought of this short story, and most of what I write, like my first novel, the second novel, is pretty angsty. It's pretty heavy. There's a lot of, but I had to put a content warning in the front of my first novel because even though the characters that I wrote they were still men in the 1950s. So there was going to be some mild sexism and there was going to be some mild internalized homophobia.
I think that's normal for that time period. But I definitely think it's fair to let people that they're going to come up against that.
Yes. So, and then the second one, there's a close family death in the second one. So I got to put all these warnings. So it's most people that have read it so far, so the beta readers, I've had at least, I think seven people have read it so far in the beta stage, editing stage. And almost at least a few of them said that it has made them tear up. Like it's made them so I'm like, oh, okay. But it's a heavy. So this short story is more fun for me. It's lighthearted. It's light on the angst. It's got more one-liner funnies, or I think it's funny, but So I've been
I'm
working.
sure it's funny.
Yeah, so I can write something fun and lighthearted. See, I don't always have to write stuff that's like super heavy. But this one, so I have this short story that I'm working on. And then my third novel is set in the 1970s. That's an enemies to lovers romance. And the characters that I have they're both former teen idols of the 70s. So I didn't grow up in the 70s, but my mom did. And I remember her telling me about all these teen idols, like David Cassidy was one and Leif Garrett was one. So I have that to work on. I've got the short story to work on. And then usually it's about 2 or 3 at the same time, because what I do is I pick one based on the mood that I'm on. Mood, then I pick the more angsty one because I'm already in the mood to write something like that. If I'm not feeling that way, then I pick the lighthearted, funny one. And also music helps. If I've been listening to a particular genre of music all day or a particular song all day or something like that, and it's gotten me into a mood, and that's what I pick. But no, I cannot do it. It has to be, so basically I have to have choices. I have to have a choice whether or not I'm going to write that day, right? Mm-hmm. Or in which thing I'm going to work on. I have to have a choice. I can't just say between the hours of 9 and 10, you're going to sit there and sit down at your desk and write. I can't do that. Because like I said, it turns it into a chore. It makes me feel like I have to do it when I want it to be a choice. I want it to be something that I choose to do. Right?
I think that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Especially for people who are neurodivergent, there's a lot of like avoidance when it comes to things that feel like you have to do it, right? Like we have a really hard time starting anything that feels like is a chore, or again, it's being forced upon us that we don't have a choice in it. That's pretty normal in the neurodivergent world. We all feel that way a little bit. So yeah. I think that makes sense for your process. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing, like I said, it has to be something that I choose. It has to be something that I can pick from. There's a question in here about how do you balance self-care with your creative work? And my answer is, because here's the thing. I've got a full-time day job. And I will argue that the self-publishing and writing and doing all this stuff, it's also a full-time freaking job.
Absolutely is.
I think that I could easily fill up 40 hours a week doing all this stuff.
You absolutely could.
Easily. So basically, I look at it like I've got 2 full-time jobs. Well, something's going to have to be sacrificed. Now, yeah. But self-care, like me taking care of my mental health and my physical health, I try to make that a little bit of a priority every day. So usually when I wake up in the morning, I try to make sure that I meditate for 10 minutes.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And I try to I have a gratitude journal. So I try to write what I'm thankful for that day. And I try to exercise. And it doesn't always happen. But because I have a remote job, I'm really lucky. That there's no commute. I don't even have to put makeup on. Like I put makeup on the day because I knew I was going to be on camera. But if I wasn't going to be on camera, I'm not going to fix my hair. I'm not going to put makeup on. So I don't have to do all that stuff. I could literally roll out of bed 5 minutes before I got to log in and just go log in. But yeah. But I'm really lucky that throughout the day, if I didn't wake up with enough time, I can do a whole bunch of other stuff. The thing that I fall short on as far as doing both of these things and the creative work is just taking care of my freaking house and keeping it clean and doing the dishes and all that stuff.
And I was rushing before I got on camera with you to pick things up in the background.
Right now, I got my freaking clothes. I got some freaking clothes right here. I'm going to tell you about this, actually. I want to just tell you about this. So I'm not in my bedroom. I'm in a whole different room in my house. This is like the guest. It was a guest room, but I turned it into a sewing room. So I don't know about you, but I actually have hobbies other than
writing. Yeah.
I crochet. I do ancestry research for my family, and I sew. So what I decided to do, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go buy brand new clothes anymore. I'm just going to alter my existing clothes to fit me better or be a different style. That hasn't been happening very much. I have my sewing machine sitting right here, and I did actually make a jean skirt out of jeans, so I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that at least. But I have all these sewing patterns over here, and I have all this yarn. But I actually made, it's a reel. It's a reel that I have on my Instagram, and it's on TikTok. I don't know if you saw it, but I called it my ADHD paralysis rescue kit. So I get that. So I get that thing where you can't make a decision. Where you just
absolutely. It happens to me all the time.
Yes.
And me and my partner used to get really frustrated with me about that. It would drive him crazy, and it's like I can't help it. I get so paralyzed sometimes that like it makes me depressed because it's like I want to do something. I
Yeah.
truly do.
Yeah.
And I cannot bring myself to do shit. I
Right.
just stuck.
Mhm.
It's the
Mhm.
worst feeling in the whole
It
world.
is.
It's all I want to do is stare at a wall.
Yes, because it's easy. You don't have to
Yeah.
think. But I have the same problem where I have so many decisions to make. And it could just be a normal day. And I can't make a decision. So I just sitting down on the couch. I got the TV on. And it's a show I've seen 5 million times. I just keep watching the same stupid shows over and over again. And then I just get on my phone and scroll around a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
And what I end up trying to do is I get on TikTok and I look for the cleaning videos to help to motivate me to get up to clean.
Does that help you?
It does sometimes if I watch enough of them, but not, all the time. But so this ADHD rescue kit, I put it together for that purpose, for the paralysis rescue kit, because I was like, okay, and what's in it is I've got a crossword puzzle in it. I've got a coloring book with colored pencils in it, and then I've got this paint by stickers book in it, and a crochet needle and some yarn in it. So if I can't do something, I just go over and grab something and then I just do that. And usually if I do that, it calms me down is what it does. Because I freeze up from the anxiety of not being able to make the decision. Because like you said, it's like I feel bad that I can't make the decision. And I've had people get frustrated with me. I've had family like they don't seem to understand, well, why can't you just make a decision? I can't do it. Because everything's a priority.
Yeah.
Everything's a priority. So what am I supposed to prioritize? So I still try to do all of my crafty things because I'm trying to keep that around for me to not forget about. But I feel like that's a common thing for neurodivergent people is to find a hobby and then you forget about it.
Absolutely. So when I moved to North Carolina like a year ago, I threw away so many old hobbies and sold so much stuff from old hobbies. I had a graveyard of old hobbies in my house. Like I taught myself how to sew when I was like 19. I had a sewing machine I sold. I had a serger that I sold. I had all this fabric that I just gave away to friends. And then I have all these other hobbies, right? And so I had to really pick which hobbies that made sense for me and narrow because we sized down, if that makes sense. So went from a big place to a little place. So I was like, I don't have room for all of this stuff anymore. So I had to pick the hobbies that meant the most to me. So I kept all my drawing and all of my painting stuff, but all the resin, all the sewing, like all the knitting stuff, like all that had to go because I didn't have space for all of it. And I'm still that way where I see like a new hobby and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I want to try that. Like a new little crafty thing.
Yeah.
And I think this harkens back to what you were saying earlier that like neurodivergence, like being neurodivergent, like we could choose to be angry that we're like late diagnosed, or we can see this as well. Maybe it's actually been in some ways like good for me because, like you said, neurotypicals filter the world in a different way. And I do think it does make us, a lot of us at least, inherently creative, right? So while my main thing might be writing, I do a lot of other creative stuff, right? And a lot of neurodivergents are like that, where they're just highly creative individuals and it's really hard for them to pick one thing. So I think it's very common for a lot of us to have a room of crafts. I don't think you're alone there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I keep telling myself, like, this isn't abandoned. I'm going to get to it.
You'll get back to it.
I'm going to get to it. Like I said, I think it's just one of those things where I have to actually make time for it. But I don't think that's going to happen because you know how the whole people are like manage your time management, all that stuff. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't manage my time. Like I
Well,
just, I feel like I wake up in the morning and I'm just like living intuitively every single day. Like I'm just doing, I feel like when I wake up in the morning, most of the things that I'm thinking I should do the day before when I'm like, okay, you should do this tomorrow. You should do this tomorrow. I'm probably not going to do. I'm probably going to wake up and I'm going to be like, well, I don't want to do that today. I'm going to do this. And
me, I just completely forget. I'll be telling myself, oh, you need to do this tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow comes, I completely forget.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too, for me is the fact that, so I'm like, okay, you need to go do this. You need to go do that. Usually it's something that I don't want to do. So I'll distract myself from not wanting to do the thing by doing something else. Like I'll organize a cabinet in my kitchen
Mhm.
when I should be doing something else that actually matters more. But I got my kitchen cabinets organized. Hey, that's avoiding something I didn't want to do.
It's just starting, right? It's
Yeah.
just starting that is the hardest part, and I
Right.
also think that plays into the decision paralysis is, like,
Yes.
starting something is very challenging for people who have ADHD. Starting and finishing tasks, those are, like, really challenging things for us, so I think it definitely plays in to all of that. How do you feel that your process is I'm trying to think how to put this. How do you keep track of all the little things? Do you have any form of organization or is it just chaos? What does it look like for you? I know for me, I am a very highly organized person, but again, I'm also autistic, so I like things to be in their little boxes.
I'll show you my planner.
Does
It,
it work for you? Do you actually keep up with it? Because I love the idea of a planner. I can never stick with them.
I mean, yeah. Some days I'm pretty good with it. I'm a colorful person. I like color coding things. I associate color. So what I usually end up doing is making it as colorful and attention getting as possible. So I'll look at it because if it's like I don't like the whole minimalist thing. I'm one of those people that's I like color and stuff like that. But so okay. So when I first got diagnosed, the very first thing that my doctor put me on was a non-stimulant. I
Oh,
think it was Strattera and it worked for me. And she tried something else, and I can't remember what it was. And we eventually went to the stimulants, Adderall, Vyvanse, all that stuff. They worked, but the side effects were really awful. Like they were just really terrible for me. So I just stopped taking them. I just stopped taking any kind of medication. So I've heard this term before. I heard this term on TikTok. I was raw dogging life. Like I had no
I love
medication,
that
so I was
term.
raw dogging life. And that's what I was doing. And I actually ended up finding out when I took the gene test that a lot of these medications that I've been on most of my life, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications and some of these stimulants actually were not good for me. I was based on this gene test, I should have been on a lower dose or I shouldn't have been on it at all. But it makes sense because it didn't work for me. They didn't work. They did not work for me at all. I gained weight, still like you mentioned earlier, I gained weight, felt awful. It didn't work. Well,
Yep.
so I went through a long period of time where I was not taking anything. And then now I have there's she's a psychiatrist, she's a specialist in ADHD. So now she has me on a different type of medication and it seems to be working a little bit because
Okay.
I will actually start something now. I might not finish it and I might not do it very well, but I'll start it. I'll try to do it. I have that little extra dopamine push to do it because that's the problem. There's no motivation for me to do it really other than the negative reinforcement of something bad happening if you don't do it. So, for example, if you don't do good at your job, you're probably going to get fired. So, you got to do
Mhm.
good at your job, right? You can't mess around because that's negative reinforcement. Well, if I don't get the bills paid, then I'm going to get in a whole lot of trouble and my shit's going to start getting turned off, like my water and my electricity. So, that's negative reinforcement, right? It's a negative reinforcement. So, I have to do it because something bad is going to happen. I don't think that's the right way to live.
A lot.
Really, that's how it
That
is.
is how it is.
That's what a lot of the world is. A lot of the world has to do with negative reinforcement. A lot of it is something bad is gonna happen to you if you don't do this thing.
Well, I think neurotypicals, like people who are neurotypical, at least my understanding is that when a neurotypical person completes a task, they get a dopamine hit,
Yes.
right? So it's like that positive reinforcement.
Yes.
But when we complete a task, it's more of, oh, thank God, my water's not going to be turned off. Like, it's not a dopamine hit. It's just, it's a thing. It
Yes.
just is.
It
There's
does not.
no
Right.
positive,
Right.
get no positive reinforcement at
Right.
all. So we are living life very much just like trying to avoid bad shit happening to
Yeah,
us.
yeah. That's really what it is. And I have all this stuff that I probably need to get done, just haven't done it yet. And I'm like, okay, because I don't want to deal with it. And there are some things that I have on a list somewhere that I just don't want to deal with, but I know I need to do. But it's not so crucial to the point where something bad is going to happen. It's just you need to deal with it at some point.
I get
But like this, so I am on a different medication now, so it's helping me get through it's giving me just enough to do it. But that doesn't mean, like I said, that it's going to be done great. It still might be done half-ass.
you running around.
So I'm going to move it. I don't, you know how this whole thing of a place for everything and everything at its place. Well, I don't really have that. I don't really, there's stuff. I have a bottle right now. I have a bottle of bubble bath,
Yeah.
Dr. Teal's bubble bath, sitting on the banister in my living room. It's been there for a couple of weeks and I just left it there. I've just started to ignore it. Like now I'm blind to it and I was just fucking sitting there. There's a bottle of fucking bubble bath just sitting on the banister in my living room. So if you come into my house, you're going, what the hell's this? I'm like, I don't know.
I do stuff like that too. I'm really bad with like shoes. My ex-husband actually put it in his vows that he would never get mad at me for my shoes because I will trail like shoes all over the house and just ignore them. I am really bad about just like taking my shoes off where I am, even in the middle of the kitchen.
Just leave them. Yeah.
I just leave them and they will stay there.
Yeah.
Like they will stay there. And I'm just blind. Like it doesn't occur to me that like they need to be moved. It doesn't like I don't know. It's a very weird thing. I get that it's like like someone else would be like, this is really messy. Like, but to me, like it just doesn't occur to me to like to pick them up and move them because again, I think it boils down to that priority thing. And that's why we get stuck in decision making because it's like we have all these other things that are like, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to do this, we have to do that. And it's like the shoes are one decision that I can choose to ignore because it's not harming anything. It's not going to cause me any negative consequences to leave my shoes all over the house, right? Yeah. So it's one decision I don't have to make. It's one thing I don't have to think about. And so I think that's like where your bubble bath is coming from. It's like a decision you can choose to ignore and it has no negative consequences.
It's just going to sit there. It's just going to sit there for I don't know how long. It's just going to sit there. People are going to come to this house and go, why you got bubble bath? Just sitting there. I don't know. I don't know where to put it. I don't want to make the decision. I got other stuff I got to do. I'm going to leave it there. And so I ordered from Chewy, Chewy.
Yeah. The animal people.
Yeah. I got it. So I went to go get it. I brought it in and I set it. So I live in a split level. So you know how you walk in, there's stairs. So some stairs. Yes. Yeah. So I set the box on the bottom, like the second to last step on the stairs that go up. And it's just sitting there. I opened it up and I got his cat food out, but it's just still sitting there. And I've left mail on the stairs because there's not really a table. And I'm afraid if I put a table in that entryway, it's going to turn into a depository of,
Yeah.
So I'm
like a pile.
Yeah. But now they're just going to be on the stairs. And I actually you mentioned shoes. I have a shitload of shoes down there in that little entryway that I don't even wear. They're just there. I don't know why they're there. I have winter boots that have probably been there for probably 2 years. I don't even know if I've worn them. They're just there. I don't know why. I'll put on the same pair of sneakers that's been there. And there's another pair of sneakers and those damn boots. And then there's something else there. I don't wear them. I don't know why they're there. They're just there. There's no reason for them to be there. I don't know. Like, people come in here and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, and my thing too, you mentioned leaving shoes. I leave cleaning products all over the fucking place because what happens, I'll be doing something. I'll be, I don't know, wandering around trying to figure out what to do. And then I'll see, oh my God, I need to dust this thing right here. It's all dusty. So I go get the duster. And then I notice, oh God, look, there's like a bunch of hairballs over here in the corner. I got to sweep them up, So then I leave the duster and then I go get the sweeper and then I notice something else and then I leave that there. It just a whole shit ton. It's like just a whole shit ton of cleaning products all over these gloves. There's a whole bunch of them in the hall bathroom here. I put them away. They're just sitting there on the bathtub for no reason. Like, because I was going to clean the bathtub and I didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I just left them there and they've been there. They just been there. I don't even know how long now. I just leave stuff everywhere. And that's the thing. So I decided a long time ago, if I want to be an author, if this is something that I want to do and I want to make a living off of it and I want to do it full time, I'm going to have to sacrifice some things. Your house is not going to be perfect. You're going to have to leave some stuff.
That's a form of self-care, right? Yeah. Even though our houses might be messy, right? Mm-hmm. It's taking care of our mental health, right? Because we cannot do everything and it will literally paralyze us.
Right.
So it's a form of self-care,
Right. Don't compare yourself to other people. That's another thing too. Especially neurotypical people. Do not compare yourself to other people. I think you actually asked this question about how can family and friends support people that are...
Yeah, I wanted to move into like community and things like that. One, do you have community in your journey of being like creative and neurodivergent? Have you tried to create a community? Do you have people you lean on? And then also, what can people do? Neurotypical as your friends and families, what can they do to support you?
Yeah. Well, as far as community goes, not really. So author community, yes. Author, absolutely. I have author friends that I can reach out to and be like, "Hey, can you look at this and tell me what your opinion is?" Absolutely have that. But as far as like support for being having its real life in real life support, not yeah, I have some friends that I could reach out to and talk to. But I don't know anybody else other than me in real life. I do know one other person, but I don't get to see them very much. They just had a daughter not too long ago. She's got that going on. But like my family's weird. I don't wanna get into it. My family's
Yeah,
all kinds of,
understood. Mine
kinds of
is
stuff. Yeah. But no, and that actually in my family in particular, like I said, I think I told you, my parents reacted really weird when I told them. They were weird about it, which made me think that a doctor at some point maybe suggested it to them, and they were like, "No, Ritalin, no," or whatever. But my mostly, I guess in real life, it's just I don't know. In like I said, I have some friends, but they're not I don't see him as much as normal, but author community, absolutely. I have all kinds of support. I have all kinds of people I can
Does that help keep you going? Like having other author friends that you can
Yes.
reach out to and stuff?
Absolutely. I love having that back and forth and that support and being able to trust somebody's judgment to look at your stuff and is this stupid? Is this crazy? What do you think? Is this good? Is this not good? Whatever. So that's absolutely wonderful. But as far as neurotypical people supporting somebody who's neurodivergent, my number one thing is please do not be judgmental.
Yeah, I
Don't
agree.
look for yourself and other people because they are not going to be able to do things the way that you do them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. You might
Hmm.
do it a whole different way, but they're not. They're doing the best that they can with what they have. That's the biggest thing, right?
I agree.
Because,
Me and my partner, we butted heads a lot because I would get stuck in that decision paralysis state, and he really didn't know how to support me. And then we've also had incidences where we've been out at social events and I start shutting down because I get really overstimulated. I've had full blown meltdowns in the gym and he just couldn't understand it. He got really frustrated with me
yeah,
no matter how much I communicated, like, the lights are too bright, the music's too loud. I feel like I want to unzip my skin and I want to walk out of it.
yeah,
He still couldn't understand. But once I got my diagnosis, it really made an improvement in our relationship because he was better able to the way that I am perceiving the world and the way that I process the world.
yeah,
And he can now see when I'm getting overstimulated. And he'll be like, "Babe, where are your headphones?" I like pull into myself and I clench my hands together and grab my hands and he'll massage my hands. He'll be like, "You're okay. You're okay. We'll try and get out of this situation." He'll try to pull me, whatever we're doing, we'll get out of it. So he stops being judgmental and supportive now that he understands that this isn't something that like I'm trying to do. My brain works differently, you know?
right.
So yeah, I agree that not being judgmental helps a lot because I feel like a lot of neurotypical people walk around feeling like absolute weirdos, a lot. And we feel so different and from everybody else. And it's
Yeah,
like, for me, I say this all the time, like, I just want to be heard and understood.
right.
And that, and being non judgmental goes so far
Yes.
in feeling heard and understood.
Yes. Accept people for how they are. Accept them for
Mhm.
how they are. And if you can't, I don't know, but that's the thing. You got to accept people for how they are. And actually, one thing, it reminded me, one thing my dad did for me one time, and this was actually before I ever got diagnosed, but moving is one of the most stressful things ever. I hate it so much. I don't ever want to do it again. I'm sure I probably will at some point in the future, but I hate it. Oh my God.
It is awful.
Yes, it's awful. So I moved, this has been 8 years ago. I moved 3 hours from where I was living to another city. And my parents came to help me. And I had to drive 3 hours. And it was the summertime, so it was hot as hell. And I had my cat at the time in a carrier. And she's freaking out, like freaking out. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was so worried that she was going to have a kitty heart attack or something. So I was all stressed out, driving with this cat that's freaking out. And I'm so sorry. I can't let you out. I can't let you out. So I get to this new apartment and I've got to make the decisions where the movers need to put stuff and I'm freaking out or whatever. So my parents were getting ready to leave. And I just broke down and started crying because I was just so stressed out by all of it. Because they were like, because they were at, I think all they did was ask me a question, and I just started crying. So my dad was like, here, I'm going to make a shopping list. And the thing about him in that situation, and he's done this before because I've called my dad plenty of times freaking out about something. He's calm and he's orderly, and he walks me through like the calming part of it. You see, like
Yeah.
he does that. So it calms me down a little bit and helps a little bit. So what your partner does, just, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to help you.
It is. Because if someone gets upset at you for like you overreacting and you have no control over it, like it just makes you feel like utter garbage.
Yeah, it does. It does. And like I said, there's a lot of things that I know that I suck at. I'm at the age where I've reached like full acceptance. So once you hit 40, you stop giving a fuck. Like you really stop giving a fuck about a lot of things. And one of the things you stop giving a fuck about is how people think of you and how you're perceived by other people. And it's freeing. It's actually pretty great. I didn't realize it would actually be this. I actually thought 40 would be like the nightmare. I was like, oh my God. Because every 40-year-old, because do you remember how 40-year-olds used to look like in the 90s? They looked like so old. But now,
I honestly think that's like bullshit that the media has fed us. Because if you think about it, like all of these movies, and I put this together recently, all of these movies where they have like teen heartthrobs, right? They're actually all being played by actors who are like 28, 32, 36.
Beverly Hills on.
So it's like we have this image of our head that 40 is old, even though some of our teen heartthrobs were actually mid 30s playing teenagers in these movies. So it's like anything over 30 is decrepit. It's complete and utter bullshit. The media has fed this to us. I don't necessarily think that's true. I just think the media is full of fucking shit. It has fed us a very wrong, negative image of aging.
100%. 100%. Because to me, it's, especially as a woman too, because I feel like men have a little bit of a different, they get a little bit
of, they get like more handsome the older they get.
They get more of a pass too. Like it's okay for them to have some wrinkles here. It's okay for them to have that for some reason. But and honestly, I have some and I'm like, whatever. Maybe I should go get Botox or something. But I don't know. It's one of those things I think about and then I forget about it. So I end up not doing it. So I don't know. But as you get older, you stop giving a fuck about certain things and you start thinking, okay, well, what can I manage? What can I realistically do with what I have and what I've got? So you may not be able to get the kitchen cleaned up today, but you got this project squared away. You got a whole bunch of social media posts made. That's something else that you have to do with the self-publishing. You got to do all that stuff. And I actually, and that's actually fun for me sometimes to do that. So I'll try to tell myself, do it.
If I'm in the mood for it, it's fun. Yeah. But again, sometimes it becomes one of those things that's like a chore. Like I feel like I have to do it because I'm trying to be a brand in a way, because you're trying to sell yourself so people will buy your books. Like it does sometimes fall into that category of, oh, I really don't want to do that. But if I'm in the mood for it, I have a lot of creative energy for it, and I'll post shit tons of stuff.
Yeah. Like the little videos. I saw yours about, I think it was trying to write with like family and kids or something. Yeah. I saw that one. Yeah. And that's the thing though. I mean, like you have to like balance all this stuff out. But it's like I said, to me, I have to just tell myself all the time, like, you have to, don't freak out about the things that you can't get to today, because you're doing the best you can with what you've got. And that's really the important thing to tell yourself, that you're doing the best you can with what you've got. And creative people in general, artists, musicians, writers, painters, potters, any of it. Okay. I think that we are almost chaotic and disorganized by nature.
Just a second, Lillian.
My cat was meowing. I don't know where he is.
Go lay down.
He might have come in here. I'm going to see where he went, because he was howling.
Oh, you're good. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but he was about to bark.
My cat, when he can't find me, he's like a clingy cat.
Oh, and he's cute.
Like he's part Maine Coon. I'm going to see if I can get him. He gets really upset if he can't see me. He has a little bird. He puts in his mouth and he walks around and cries with it if he doesn't know where I'm at. He's clingy. He's like a dog. He's not like a cat at all. I'm going to see if I can get him. Hold on.
Okay. All right.
Oh, no. I don't know how long
Yeah. So cute.
He's a big cat.
What's his name?
He went down.
Mr. Piddles, I love that.
Yeah.
How big is he? Like, how much does he weigh?
Well, let's see if I can hold him up for you. I'll let you see.
Wow. You have the world's biggest cat. The thing's as big as you.
Yeah. Yeah. He's about 30 pounds. Yeah.
Wow,
He's a big cat.
big boy.
Yeah, he's part Maine Coon. So they get to be pretty big. But yeah.
They do. They get massive.
Yeah, I got cat fur in my lip gloss now. But anyway, he likes being in the same room as me. And
yeah, mine are really needy too. They
yeah.
always want something. Mine was like over here about to bark because he wanted water. And I can't leave water in his bowl because he will just drink it all really fast. Because he's such a like greedy little thing. Like he'll drink it so fast and throw it all up. So it's like I can only give him a little bit at a time. And so I normally give him a little bit and then I wait for him to drink it. And then I give him a little bit and then I wait. And I give him a little bit and I wait. And then I'll be like, okay, you've had at least a half bowl full of water at this point. You're not dying of thirst. So and then we'll repeat the process an hour later. All day long, I'm watering my dog.
He throws up the water?
Because he drinks too fast. Yeah, he drinks so fast and he will throw it up. Because he's like waterlogging himself. Because he will, if I fill up his water bottle, he will drink the whole thing at like hyper speed. Right? Like he doesn't have any sense of like, I don't know, doing things in a slow way. He's a piggy. He wants everything.
Yeah.
All right. So back on to topic. Let's jump into looking forward. I'd love to know, since you're juggling all these things, your future goals and what are your future goals for your career, your creative career? And what advice would you have to any other neurodivergent or ADHDers out there?
Well, so for the future, I obviously want to get to a point where I can make a living off of writing and I don't have to have an outside job. If I had to have a part-time outside job, I don't think I'd mind that so much. I actually thought about going on Fiverr somewhere and offering to beta read for people or critique their work or something. Obviously, and I could sensitivity read for queer women or for women in general. Absolutely. I could do that too. But I thought about doing that because I don't know, I guess I thought it might help me, but I figured that's something I could do part-time if I had to, if I wanted to. But yeah, ultimately the goal is publish enough books and be making enough sales to the point where I don't have to work anymore. I can just make a living off of that. But in the meantime, I got to get this second novel ready for publication, novel number 2. And then I got to figure out a way to maybe simultaneously promote the first one with it. Because one thing that you have to decide self-publishing is whether you want to be exclusive on Amazon or whether you want to go wide, right?
Yep.
And I've been exclusive on Amazon. My first novel's been exclusive on Amazon, but I was thinking about taking it out of KDP Select, which is the Kindle Unlimited, and letting it go wide anywhere you want. It's just the ebook. Yeah. It's the ebook that has to stay with them if you pick that. So, but the second novel is enrolled in that, so it's going to be a part of that. So, but yeah, the immediate future is getting that off the ground. I am going to be sending out a early cover reveal and preview to my email subscribers. So I'm going to send that out too. And then after this novel, I have the 1970. I don't even have it titled yet. I thought about picking different titles and giving a poll to see if people like the titles. I'm actually really excited about the 70s one because the 1970s is like my favorite decade ever. I collect albums from the 60s and 70s. I've got them all hanging up downstairs in my basement. I love the 70s. So I'm really excited about that. I think I'm about 20-some thousand words into that one right now. I have no idea when it's going to come out. I feel like I have to fly by the seat of my pants when it comes to planning out these things and when they'll be published. Because this second one took forever. It took a really long time for me to even get this one out, get this one going. And it's not even, it's a novella. It falls right underneath the word count for a full novel. So it's not quite, it's still a novella. I think it's like almost 50,000 words, which is under that threshold a little bit. But anyway, so that's the immediate future. And then there's the short story that I'm working on. I intended that to be put out there for my email subscribers along with this second novel because they're both set in the 90s. So the novel actually takes place in 1999. There's flashbacks into the early 90s. And then the short story is also in 1999 because, like I said, I was trying to build on those 90 teen movie tropes where they're like making deals and all that stuff. So I'm going to try to get that one out around the same time. That one, it's not going to be very long, but I did want some people to look at it first before I started putting it out there for people. But so that's the immediate future. Long term, obviously, that's the immediate future. And advice for neurodivergent authors would be
just like creative people. And if you want to tailor it to writers, absolutely, that's fine.
It could be applicable to anybody who's creative. Do things the way that you want. Because even neurotypical people, when I first started writing, and one of the things that I did is there's a website called the Novel Factory.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and you can download all these worksheets, right? Okay. And fill them out, and it's supposed to help you plot your novel and help you with your characters and stuff like that. Well, that's what I did with an idea that I had. And you know what happened?
You didn't write it.
No, I lost all interest in it. I lost all interest. I felt like I already wrote it. Like those are because for me, part of the thrill of writing is finding out what's going to happen, because I feel like I'm so much better at it when I'm spontaneously coming up with things. And sometimes that doesn't work and I have to go back and fix it because I forgot about this thing in the plot that's not going to work with what I came up with. But that's the whole point, is to just let it all sort of go out there. I feel like I'm so much better that way. Do things the way that work for you. A lot of the advice out here for authors is geared towards neurotypical authors. And they're teaching a very specific way. It's a very organized way. And like I said, a lot of authors, that's the only way they know how to do it. And it's perfectly fine. But if you're neurodivergent, your brain's probably not going to like that.
Yeah.
So even if your methodology is chaotic and weird and doesn't make sense to anybody else, it doesn't matter. If it helps you get it done, do it that way. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about it. It doesn't matter if it's right. Just do it. If it helps you and it gets it done, do it that way. I also think that for creative people, especially if you're neurodivergent, lean into your neurodivergence because it is beneficial to you as a creative, because you are going to be able to see the world and experience the world through a very different filter. And that means you're going to be able to take that filter and you're going to be able to put something out there into the world that is unique. Nobody else has thought of it that way, but you have. Nobody else has seen it that way, but you have. And it's a unique thing. And like you said earlier, lean into it. Let it benefit you. Let it be a tool. Don't feel bad about it. It's a tool. It really is.
Yeah. I think when we stop being angry about it, that's when we can really lean into it. We have to if you're late diagnosed like me or Lillian, you definitely have to work through those stages of grief, because it's a little bit of, what is it, like you get angry and then there's like denial. And I definitely, like, I know I'm recently diagnosed. There's times where I'm like, I'm in denial. Like, I'm still dealing with it. Yeah. There's some days where I'm like, there's no way. And then I do something or something happens. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two professionals said, I need to stop doubting this. So I think once we start accepting, and if we can even move into loving ourselves through our neurodivergence, that helps a lot too. We can use it more as a tool and work with it instead of against it.
It's a gift. It's a gift. I think it's a gift. I do. I think it's something that if you look at it that way, hey, I got gifted with this awesome perspective. I got gifted with this awesome thing that I can harness to put creative stuff out into the world. I can do things. I can harness it and use it for this purpose. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, it has been lovely speaking with you, Lillian.
Yeah.
Where can our listeners find you out there on the interwebs if they want to connect with you?
Well, my website is lillianempire.com. I am on Instagram, Lillian Empire, and I am on TikTok, Lillian Empire.
And TikTok.
Do what?
I'll have to find you on TikTok.
Yeah.
I'll find you on TikTok because I'm on TikTok and I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love it more than I hate it, but there's days where I just like the algorithm kills me, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh,
I know. I haven't been posting on it in a while. I think when I do my cover reveal for my next book, I'll probably post it on there. Most of my audience is on Instagram. I don't have a, big audience. They're mostly on Instagram. So I usually use my energy and my posting, use Canva for your that's what I use. So I usually do the Instagram posts and stuff like that rather than reels or videos. But yeah, I'm with you there. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to like it's just well, I just feel like it's pointless. I have noticed though that if I don't post for a really long time and when I finally do, the views go up in the thousands. And I think it's because the algorithm is trying to give you that dopamine to make you post again. And then next time you post, it's 200 views or something. So I think there is some sort of a trickery going on. So that's why I'm okay, TikTok. But I've actually found some really useful things. I'm sure you've seen ADHD TikToks. Have you seen the ADHD simulator TikToks where
no.
they simulate what it's like to have ADHD? So it's a first person, they're going around their house and they've got layered thoughts going in. So it's exactly how I think all the time. I'll have a song playing in the back of my mind somewhere, a random song I haven't heard in 15 years or something. And then I'll have a line of thought, a running narrative of something I did 10 years ago that I'm embarrassed about. And you got to go clean the damn kitchen. Why aren't you, let's go clean the kitchen. We need to go downstairs and scoop out the litter boxes. And you see this person darting around in their house, moving from one side quest to another. And it's really interesting to see, but I'm like, this is exactly my experience.
I like literally woke up with a song in my head this morning and then all these things I have to do. And it's like podcast, breakfast, shower, all these other things. And I totally get it the same way. I want to ask one more question before we get off of here. What's something that your readers, your audience may not know about you? What's something unique or weird or whatever you want to share? It could be as simple as your favorite TV show if they have no idea about that. Just whatever you want to share.
I don't know all know this. Some of them might know because if they subscribe to my, I don't know. I don't know if they all know this, but I love choirs. I love
Really?
choral music. If I didn't have all this shit going on right now with job and self-publishing and my abandoned hobbies that I promise I'm going to get back to, I'd be in a choir right now. I love being in a choir. I was in a choir from middle school to high school. I was in one a few years ago. I love if I would be in one right now, I'd go find one somewhere. I love them. And actually, I wrote a short story for Christmas and it was about I especially love men's choirs. And the reason why I love men's choirs is because every choir that I've ever been in, there's always a shitload of women and like a little tiny male section because men don't do it as much. So I love men's choirs because I love all the different voice parts. I actually got to sing in a choir one time with female basses and female tenors. That was actually pretty awesome. But I love choirs. And this short story was in this universe of a men's choir at a fictional university. And I was actually thinking about basing a series on a men's choir and a women's choir. So it'd be like romance in a men's choir universe and then an FF romance in a women's choir universe. And I was in a women's choir too in high school. I love it. I just love the blending of all the music. Now I can read music. I can read it not perfectly, like, I can't sight read, like, I can tell you what the note is, and I can tell you the kinda note that it is and what if it's an A or F or whatever, A, F sharp, whatever, but I can't translate the note on the page to the sound it's supposed to make in my voice, right? I have a hard time with that, but usually my voice part is actually mezzo-soprano, so I can sing really high soprano. I think the last time I actually had a voice teacher at one point, and I would sing at competitions. She told me that I have a 3 octave, 4 octave range, so I can sing some alto. I can't get too low. But usually what ends up happening is I usually end up being an alto because there's like a choir joke where if you're a girl and you can read music, they make you be an alto because sopranos are always singing the melody. Sopranos don't sing the harmony as much. But yeah, I love choirs. I love choral music. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And there's actually gay men's choirs all across the country. There's the Boston Gay Men's Choir. They are so good. And there's one in Los Angeles, and they have a video. And I'm going to recommend this for people who are listening. Go look for, I think it's on YouTube. I think it's the Los Angeles. gay men's choir. It might be the Boston one, but one of them did the song True Colors by Cyndi Lauper. It is wonderful.
I'm pulling up.
Yeah.
It's
So,
Los Angeles.
oh, really?
According to YouTube, they've both done it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's so good.
Okay.
Like, it
Listen
just
to it.
sends chills through my body to
It's like a
hear.
brain itch.
I love all the layers and voice parts. So I don't know if that's something that I don't know if I've ever talked about that or mentioned that on social media or my newsletters before. But yeah, that's something that a lot of people wouldn't really know. But I love choral music. It's just a beautiful, just absolutely
agree.
gorgeous. But yeah, if I had time, I would be in a choir right now. I would be singing in a choir right now. I don't have time, so I just listen.
We're all juggling a lot. I got the full-time job and the writing and all of that. And it's like, I'd love to try a million other things, but you can only do so much. You can only do so much. So it is what it is. And thank you, Lillian, for being here, for being so gracious to talk with us and for our listeners. I think we really dug into some really cool stuff today about ADHD that I haven't really dug into with other people I've interviewed. So thank you. Really appreciate that. And if anyone here is interested in finding Lillian, I will be sure to link all of her social media in the show notes. So thank you for being here, everyone. And take care. Take care of yourselves. Give yourself some grace. All right. Bye.
Bye.